For most of human history, life moved at the speed of muscle. A man could only walk as far as his legs would carry him. A farmer could only harvest as much as his hands could gather. A village produced what it needed, and little more. The rhythm of life followed the rising and setting of the sun. And then, in the late 1700s, something changed. Not a war, not a revolution of kings and governments, but a revolution of machines. In workshops and mills across Britain, strange new devices began to appear. Iron gears, spinning frames, pistons powered by steam. These machines could spin thread faster than any human hand, pump water from deep mines, and move enormous loads with relentless precision. At first, they seemed like curiosities, but within a few decades, they would transform the entire world. Cities would explode in size. Factories would rise like iron forests, and humanity would begin moving faster than it ever had before. This was the Industrial Revolution, and once it began, there was no turning back. Before factories, production was slow and personal. Cloth, tools, furniture, and everyday goods were made by skilled craftsmen working in small workshops or inside their homes. This system was often called the cottage industry. A family might spin wool into thread, another might weave it into cloth. A blacksmith forged tools one piece at a time. It was steady work, but it was also painfully slow. Demand for goods was growing, especially in Britain. Trade networks were expanding across Europe and the Atlantic. Populations were rising. People wanted more cloth, more tools, more everything. But traditional methods simply could not keep up. Something had to change. And that change arrived in the form of invention. The first sparks of the Industrial Revolution appeared in the textile industry. Inventors began designing machines that could spin thread and weave cloth many times faster than human workers. One of the most famous breakthroughs came from James Watt, who improved the steam engine in the late 1700s. His engine allowed machines to be powered not by water wheels or human labor, but by steam. Steam changed everything. Factories no longer needed to be built beside rivers. They could be built anywhere. And once machines began running on steam power, production exploded. Cloth mills filled with spinning machines that clattered day and night. Smoke poured from tall brick chimneys. Entire buildings vibrated with the rhythm of iron gears and belts. Work that once took days could now be done in hours. Industry had been born. As factories multiplied, so did cities. Workers flooded into industrial centers searching for jobs. Small towns transformed almost overnight into massive urban hubs. Cities like Manchester became symbols of the new industrial age. Factories lined the rivers. Rows of cramped brick housing stretched for miles. Smoke from coal fires hung permanently in the air. For many workers, life was harsh. Factory shifts often lasted 12 to 16 hours a day. Children worked dangerous machinery. Safety regulations were almost non-existent. Yet, despite the hardship, people kept coming. Because factories offered something rare in the old world: steady wages. And for millions, that meant opportunity. Industry did not just change factories, it changed movement itself. Steam engines soon powered something even more revolutionary: locomotives. In the early 1800s, railways began stretching across the countryside. Trains could move goods and people faster than anything humanity had ever built. A journey that once took days by horse could now take hours. Coal, iron, grain, and manufactured goods could travel across entire countries at unprecedented speed. Railroads became the arteries of industrial civilization, pumping resources and products between mines, factories, ports, and cities. The world was shrinking. Distance no longer meant the same thing it once had. By the mid-1800s, the Industrial Revolution had reshaped society. Mass production made goods cheaper and more widely available than ever before. New industries appeared almost constantly: steel, chemicals, railroads, electricity. Technological progress began feeding on itself. Every invention sparked another, and the changes spread far beyond Britain, reaching Europe, the United States, and eventually the entire globe. But the revolution was not only about machines, it was about how humans lived. Rural societies slowly transformed into urban ones. Work shifted from farms to factories. Entire economies reorganized around industry. For better and worse, humanity had entered a new age. The Industrial Revolution did not truly end. It simply evolved. The steam engines and spinning machines of the 1800s eventually gave way to electricity, assembly lines, and mass manufacturing. Factories grew larger, production became faster, entire industries rose from the foundations laid in those early industrial cities. In the early 20th century, innovators like Henry Ford refined the idea of mass production with the moving assembly line. A single automobile could now be built in a fraction of the time it once required. Later still came computers, automation, and robotics. Each wave of innovation built upon the last. Today, machines assemble electronics, manage global supply chains, and even assist in writing software. The factories of the 19th century may seem primitive compared to modern industry, but their influence is unmistakable. The Industrial Revolution did not just introduce machines, it introduced a new relationship between humans and technology, one where innovation never truly pauses. And in many ways, the gears that first began turning in the smoky factories of Britain are still turning today. Today, we live inside the world the Industrial Revolution created. Cities powered by electricity, factories guided by computers, global networks moving goods across oceans and continents in a matter of days. It is easy to think of these things as modern miracles, but their story begins much earlier. It begins in the smoky mills of 18th century Britain, where iron gears turned beneath wooden ceilings and steam engines hissed beside spinning machines. Those early inventors could not have imagined the world their machines would help create. They were simply trying to build something faster, something stronger, something more efficient. Yet with every improvement, the pace of human life quietly accelerated. The Industrial Revolution did not just change how goods were made, it changed how civilization moved. And even now, centuries later, the gears that first began turning in that age of steam are still pushing the world forward.